Hey there, women of welcome, and everyone else who's going to be joining us. We're going to attempt to try and have 3 other collaborating partners on this call this morning because this is incredibly important. So if you are just tuning in, please stick around just for the first couple minutes while we try and get everybody loaded onto here. We have 3 partners that we are working with, Afghan Evac, World Relief, and We Choose Welcome. So what we're going to be talking about today, hold on one second. We are going to go with World Relief. We're going to go live with Afghan Evac. We're going to go live with We Choose Welcome. So I'm just making sure I get all of these accepted. There's Matt. Sean should be joining us from Afghan Evac here shortly. And then we have one other that we are looking to get invited in here. Hi, everybody. Let's see here. One more. Lord willing, we all know this takes Jesus. Okay, for 4 people. So I just accepted We Choose Welcome. Hi, everyone. I don't want to get into too much of it just now because I feel like every time I do and then someone joins on, then you can't hear what they say. It's kind of muted in the logistical background of things. But hey, everyone, women of welcome, Afghan Evac, World Relief, and then hopefully We Choose Welcome community is going to be joining us on here just in a second. We're going to be talking about keeping our promise to our Afghan allies. Hopefully we can get We Choose Welcome on here in just a second. Hold on and we'll get going. Let's see here. Here we go. Just accepted. Hang tight with us, folks. This is an important conversation we need to have, and we're just bringing in all of the players that need to be in partnership here. We're trying to this morning bring together the faith community and also, it says We Choose Welcome is unable to join. Try it again there, folks. We are trying to bring together the faith community and the military community this morning to really shed light on some troubling discussions that are happening in the current administration concerning our Afghan allies. So we're going to try one more time with We Choose Welcome here. Otherwise, we will need to get going, but we want them to be a part of this. And if not, we will direct you back to them and that community here because they have some advocacy asks as well. Let's try one more time. Here we go. Okay, I just accepted We Choose Welcome, so we'll see if they pop on here. Sean is joining us from California. Matt, I don't know where you are in the country. There we go. Matt's probably Chicago. Yep. And then Brooklyn, where are you joining us from?
I am in North Carolina, Wake Forest, North Carolina, just north of Raleigh.
Okay, sounds good. And I'm in Colorado. All right, we're all on Active Jesus. Thank you so much. All right, we are going to be talking today as several communities that are coming together to highlight the importance of what is really taking place or is in discussion of taking place towards our Afghan allies, which is a very special and specific population of folks that we want to take really good care of. And we are going to need our voice in order to ensure that there is care and protection in place for those allies of ours. So just as a quick reminder, back in 2021, over 80,000 Afghans were evacuated out of Afghanistan with Operation Allies Welcome. That was a mission that we went on to actually try and take out and evacuate as many of our ally friends and Afghans who were facing a life with the Taliban in Afghanistan. And so now most of those people are in some sort of limbo. And I'm going to have Matt give us a context of what is really going on, why are we on this call, and how did we get here? Why are we here at this moment? So Matt from World Relief, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Bree. We appreciate so much the opportunity to bring us together. This is a really troubling dynamic that we're hearing could happen. But basically, the dynamic is background, as you said. Afghans have been coming to the United States after serving alongside the U.S. military or because they're at risk for other reasons for a number of years, in large numbers in 2021 when Kabul fell. And initially, those folks came with humanitarian parole in many cases. In the last few years, generally, Afghans have been coming either as refugees, which is a longstanding legal program for individuals who have faced a well-founded fear of persecution for reasons like their race, their religion, their political opinion, and in the case of Afghanistan, often specifically because of their service to the U.S. military. Sometimes they'll come through a similar process known as a special immigrant visa, which is specifically for individuals who serve the U.S. military or other parts of the U.S. mission in Afghanistan or in Iraq. So many of those people have already come, but many others were left behind. And many of the people who have already come have loved ones, family members, immediate family members who are still outside, whom they are desperate to be reunited to. And the dynamic this week has been news that there's about 1,100 Afghans who are currently in Qatar in that process to be resettled as refugees in the United States or to be able to come in another legal fashion, waiting for that processing on the part of the U.S. government. But as most of this audience will know, refugee resettlement was suspended early in the new Trump administration back in January 2025. For a while, special immigrant visa holders were still being approved and able to travel, and then that processing was suspended last fall, which has left these folks in limbo. And then the news this week has been that the administration is considering sending roughly 1,100 Afghans who had hoped to be resettled to the United States instead to the Democratic Republic of Congo, unless they want to return to the Taliban in Afghanistan. So basically, an impossible choice. You can choose to go to one of the world's greatest humanitarian crises or to another. Both of these are not great options. I know many people on this call will be very familiar with the dynamics facing folks who serve the U.S. military in Afghanistan under the Taliban. The Democratic Republic of Congo is another conflict that we are very familiar with at World Relief. We've operated in the DRC for 25 years, and it is among the other world's greatest crises, with really decades off and on of war and conflict. And it doesn't make any sense at all to send refugees from one conflict to another horrific conflict. And we are hoping that we can persuade the U.S. government to reconsider this proposal.
Okay. Well, I have so many questions as to why we would even consider this out of all the places, why we would even consider this. But I'm going to head over to Sean with Afghan EVAC. And I'm just going to ask, I mean, you are involved in the military community. You are a former service member yourself. Tell us, how are our Afghan allies, how is this population of people currently existing? How are they surviving here in the U.S. and over in Qatar or in Afghanistan? Give us kind of the landscape of how our allies are either being treated or existing currently right now.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me today. Folks, I'm Sean. I lead Afghan EVAC. And Afghans are existing in limbo almost exclusively. Right now, it is important to differentiate the 80,000 that came during the withdrawal. Those are the folks that are in the most limbo right now. There are about another 110, 120,000 that came through Enduring Welcome, which is the program that Afghan EVAC built with the Biden administration. And really important to that program was safe, durable resettlement, right? It wasn't an emergency anymore. Now it was get here through existing pathways. And those folks are generally fine. The folks that came through with the withdrawal, the folks that have been here the longest, are still in limbo. They still don't have asylum adjudicated, or if they do have it adjudicated, they don't have their green cards yet. They are having hard time getting employment authorization. They're having a hard time existing here. Many of them are still waiting for their families who had been separated from them. And that was a big effort during the Biden administration. They only got 2,500 people reunified. They had 15,000 left to go. And then we'll talk about Afghanistan last. Afghans are in 90 countries around the world seeking permanence, seeking their American dream like they were promised. And on day one of the Trump administration, President Trump, through executive order, shut down the flights that were coming out, that were getting 5,000 Afghans a month out of Afghanistan, and they shut down all refugee processing. So people are scared, people are frustrated, people are really terrified, and we haven't even talked about the folks in Qatar yet, right? The folks in Qatar have been trapped on what was a good thing. It was a transit base where people would go, those 5,000 Afghans that were coming out of Kabul every month would go to 4 transit bases. Number 1, Tirana, Albania. Number 2, the Philippines. Number 3, Germany. And the flagship place was Qatar. You would only go to one of those, and then you would move on to the United States after a month or two of processing. On day one, President Trump shut that down, and it was so stark that they had to have a diaper underground railroad in the first days of the administration, because foreign aid paid for diapers for people at the camp. So those people that are at the camp are terrified. They're learning things in the news They're learning things, not from camp staff. The camp staff is also learning stuff from the news. So people are just frustrated and sad.
I mean, let me ask you this before we move back onto Matt really quick, but what were they promised? When we say keeping our promise to our Afghan allies, exactly were Afghans promised when we were over there doing all of our military exploits in the Middle East? What were they promised?
Sure. Look, they were promised that if they stood with us, we'd stand with them. It was actually exactly what President Trump said to Iranians, right? He said, "Hey, we're looking for a pilot. If you stand with us, we'll take care of you. We'll make sure you're taken care of." And we know that wasn't going to be delivered on. But people with flags on their shoulders, diplomats, service members, would go into, call it a tire shop in Afghanistan, and say, "Hey, we need your help. Will you work with us? If you work with us, we're going to take care of you." Then that turned into legislation that was, "Hey, people who worked for us for 2 years," which was later shrunk down to 1 year. People who worked with us for 2 years can get a green card, can apply for special immigrant visa status, get a green card, come to the United States. They get a green card as soon as they get here, which is an indication of how the American people feel about people who stand with our soldiers and service members. And that was working. It wasn't ever fast enough, but it was working. And then on the way out of Afghanistan, promises were made to all of the people that had to stand up to make democracy work there. So maybe they didn't quite fit the special immigrant visa status, but they were women special operators who fought our war or collected intelligence for us. They were lawyers and prosecutors who put the Taliban away. And when we lost the war, they were in real danger because the Taliban was coming back. So they were bringing them out. Also, among that refugee population, there are 3,000 family members of active duty U.S. military service members. 150 of those family members are stuck at CAS right now. So we have a situation in which we're about to send a bunch of military family members to the DRC, an active conflict zone, or they can go back to Afghanistan. I think your viewers can probably take a guess at what the Taliban would do to the mother of a service member. And they don't really have to guess because about a year ago over the holidays, the mother of a U.S. military service member's throat was slit. She was killed. And it was because she was still stuck there.
How does the military community feel about this broken approach to what we're doing? Like, I mean, is there outrage in the military community?
Yeah, people are very upset, but it's odd, right? Like, we talk about honor, courage, and commitment. Those are the Navy and Marine Corps core values. And a lot of people like stood up and had a lot to say during the August withdrawal in 2021. But I'm really disappointed in seeing that. Well, actually, maybe I'm not disappointed. It sucks because this administration has proven that they will come after you, right? And people are afraid that if they speak up, they might come after you. So we hear a lot in private from Republican lawmakers and from people who are still in the military. I got a bunch of messages yesterday from people who were on the ground in Kabul, leaving on our way out. The last military folks on the ground in Kabul during the withdrawal, and they're pissed and they're apoplectic. They don't know what to do, but they can't speak out because Pete Hegseth is vindictive. And they just fired the Navy secretary. Like people are terrified. So they're angry, but I hope that people will consider this call that if you're retired, if you're out, you got to have your honor, courage, commitment. You got to speak up. You got to let the world know how you feel. Afghans can't speak up for themselves right now because it's dangerous for them. Nobody's going to mess with us. We're veterans. They're not going to harass us.
Yeah. Let me ask you this, Matt. What do you feel like is the most troubling aspect when Sean talks about the different populations, the segments of the populations? We're talking about family members. Reports are saying there's over 400 kids at that base in Qatar. Like, what's the most troubling aspect of keeping these folks in limbo and not keeping our promise to them?
Yeah, I mean, there's more than one. It's so hard to come up with just one incredibly troubling aspect
Right.
about this whole situation. It's just it's cruel, and it's hard to fathom why we would, as a country, engage in this. But I think when I think about the situation, I do think about those children. I mean, 400 children, and many of them have. I mean, we have resettled a lot of Afghans at World Relief over the last number of years, and we have a number of cases with people who have children who are stuck somewhere else. Some of them in Qatar, some in other parts of the world, who are in a process to try to be reunited. And a few years ago, we would have told them this is what the process looks like, and it might take a while, but there is a process. And now it's unclear that those processes will work at all. And then instead, you're being told, choose if you want this child to go to back to the Taliban, where, as Sean just said, unfortunately, we know what is likely to happen, or go to the Democratic Republic of Congo, a completely separate conflict, which is, well, also, I mean, it is a completely separate situation from Afghanistan, and yet very similar in terms of the level of human suffering. And it's just incomprehensible to me. It doesn't make any sense at all. And I think that the vast majority of Americans, if they were paying attention, would be just horrified by this idea. But it is hard in this moment. I think, to your point, Sean, sometimes people are really upset. A lot of times people have no idea what's going on, because this is like way down the list of things in the news right now, even though it is a really shocking story. And sometimes people will hear it and they're not sure they should believe it because it seems so absurd. But it is really important that we pay attention to what's being considered and raise our voices. That's what we're invited to do as Americans.
Yeah. I mean, and just even thinking about Brooke, I was having a conversation with a friend just yesterday about this, and the concerns came up about vetting, and the concerns came up about, oh, well, we're just slowing things down right now because the previous administration just let everything in and everybody in. And yet, my encouragement back to her was, well, these were programs that were set up by our government. These are the vetting processes were set up by our government. They're at a military base at the transfer of our government. So it's not like this has been an out of control thing. This has been a very controlled thing from our government the whole time. But there is a moral obligation, obviously, as Christians on this call. It's let your yes be yes and let your no be no. Talk to us just about, I mean, you're also in a welcome community that is a Christian-based community. What do you feel like is our moral obligation from a faith-based perspective to address this issue?
Yeah, well, thank you, Bree, and thank you, Sean and Matt. My name is Brooklyn. I'm with Choose Welcome, and like Bree said, I think that it is a moral obligation, moral imperative, and I think many of us who find ourselves in Christian communities feel this way. And Matt can definitely speak to the numbers of people who are wanting to welcome. But I think that one of the biggest things that stands out to me is I'm looking in this chat right now, and I see these beautiful souls who are stuck in limbo. And right now, I just want to first address that we see you, and we're working towards finding ways to welcome here, and we're advocating and continuing to work towards those things. And I think that that's the biggest thing that we have to focus on, is just our moral imperative, not just to this broad community, but also individuals. Because when we look at what scripture calls us to do, when we look at what we're supposed to move through the world like as people of faith, we're supposed to love God, we're supposed to love our neighbor. And right now, there is a lot of lip service being done in this country towards God, saying that we are a Christian nation, saying that we care about Christianity or people following Jesus. But when we look at it, we're kind of moving through the world as a country as whitewashed tombs, when our yes isn't yes and our no isn't no. We have to be true to our word, but also true to the love that we're called to share in the world. And so to all of the folks who are in the Christian community, this is a wonderful way for us to be able to speak and stand in the gap here, and to actually be love and be welcome. We're not just called from the moral imperative of we're called to love our enemies even, but these are people who fought alongside us, who linked arms with us, who cared for us and our families. This is a whole nother moral imperative. There's as Christians, if you're a person of faith, it's love your enemies. Yes, do that already. And then love your neighbor is this primary commandment that's linked with loving God. And then how much more so is it a moral imperative for us to care for the people who we called brothers and sisters who linked arms with us to be able to care for us, and bring the people that we love and who were in Afghanistan home safe. Like, there are so many people who would not be here in this country if those who were in Afghanistan like did not stand up and stand alongside them and provide that really important cultural translation across the board. I mean, I think it's even if you're not a person of faith, I believe that it's a moral imperative, but even more so, how much more so as people of faith should we be standing in this conversation? And I think the most important thing that we should be thinking about here is like it's a moral imperative and for humanity in general to follow through on our word. But I also think when people mention national security and are worried about security, this is a secure pathway and it has been vetted. Like, people, it's the most vetted. Like, there's nothing else that could there's nothing else. But I think that the issue of security is us not following through on our word is an issue of national security. And I think people need to understand that. Like, that's the concern. For me, is not following through on our word makes our word void in the future. And that is a national security concern.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I mean, I was just, as I was talking with my friend about this yesterday, just kind of going back and forth about kind of all of her questions that she had. I was like, just think about this in a very practical sense. You've got family members who are trapped. And let's say you have a serviceman that is here in the US, right? And his family is going to then be sent to the DRC. Just the reunification, like, how does that, it doesn't happen. How does that happen? And this is family separation. This is deeply, deeply troublesome. And to me, it feels evil. Not only that you wouldn't let your yes be yes and your no be no, not only just from a global security issue in terms of like who's going to believe us, who's going to work with us in the future, but also just on a very practical, like human level in terms of like, these are families. These are military families that have served with us, and we don't want to sit by and watch their families separate, break up, never be reunified, and make this more difficult for them. So, Sean, let's get to it. What can we do? This is highly problematic. I think some people get tired of saying, "Oh, well, I use my voice for this. I use my voice. Nothing ever changes." What I would say is your voice absolutely matters. We have absolutely seen that then when there is heightened calls, when there is heightened engagement and energy and anger around certain issues, that the administration pulls off of things. And so right now we're just in discussions. That's the reporting, that we're in discussions that this is going to be what we're going to do. So, Sean, tell us, what is it that we should be calling and emailing and saying at this point that you think is actually really going to make a difference?
Sure, thank you. Before I get to that, I want to highlight one more thing about this. You were talking about how evil this is. I hear a lot from this administration about trafficking children, right? They don't want to traffic children. CAS is 42% children, and they're going to traffic them to the DRC, and who knows what's going to happen to them. And it just seems like something you just cannot stand for. So what can everybody do about it? Folks, what you can do is you can call your representatives. You can call the White House switchboard. You want to ask for two things. You want to ask for an immediate fix to this. Don't send them to DRC. And then you want to ask both Congress and the White House. People need protection. The Afghans that are here in the United States need protection, need TPS, some sort of temporary status so they can get through their immigration processing, because that's been taken away. And then for Afghans abroad, we need to make sure that they're not going to be sent somewhere dangerous. The preference would be that they're sent here, that they are able to be brought here. Now, there are some people who are denied. Those folks are going to need to go somewhere. The place for them is somewhere that is safe, where they can quickly resettle. It should probably be tied to the travel advisories. State Department does level 1, 2, 3, and 4 travel advisories. 3 and 4 is pretty bad, so maybe we just say we're not going to send them there. But the overarching call to action here is show up, call your members of Congress and the White House switchboard, ask them to protect these folks, and donate to your local organizations that are helping these folks. You can donate to Afghan Evac. You can donate to any of the organizations here. If you're gonna give to people who are on the front lines of changing the policy or taking care of these folks.
Yeah. So, Matt, I'm going to put you on the spot just so that we re-emphasize. I want you to name just a couple of things that have actually been reversed or stayed off because of advocacy that has happened. I'm thinking kind of PEPFAR, USA Aid. I'm thinking some of the, can you name a couple of other things that you know that our advocacy has actually made a difference around?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we're all aware of some areas where our advocacy hasn't reached the level where it has made a difference, but there are examples of this working. And I think it's when the phones start ringing off the hook on Capitol Hill that this tends to happen. So you mentioned, Bree, last summer, separate issue, but in some ways related, and global concerns, there was a push to revoke a bunch of funding for PEPFAR, the President's Emergency Plan for AIDS
Right.
Relief. And Christians in particular, who were a big part of building that process under President George W. Bush, made phone calls and reached out to the members of Congress and said, this is something we're proud of. We don't want to see this stop. We appreciate the millions of lives that have been saved by this program. And there was enough Republicans and senators and Democratic senators who worked together and said, actually, no, we're going to stop that rescission of those funds. So this still works when people make those telephone calls, when they reach out to their representatives, their senators. I think even back to the first administration, probably the least popular immigration policy was separating children from parents at the border in 2018. And I remember kind of, banging my head up against the wall thinking it's not possible that Americans are okay with this. But what I eventually realized is we had not broken through to the point where enough Americans understood what was actually happening. And when that did happen, the phones were ringing off the hook in Congress. And the polling showed that that policy was very unpopular, including among evangelical Christians, including among, basically every religious demographic you could look at. And the policy was eventually halted with an executive order. And I think the important thing to underscore, as Sean just said, this is a reporting. I think this is credible reporting, but it hasn't happened yet. So there's still
That's
time to
right.
stop it. And to then insist the administration, you should be reopening the refugee resettlement process. We should be reopening the special immigrant visa processing for Afghans who serve the U.S. military. Frankly, also for Congolese refugees who, we're taking people from the #1 country of origin for refugees resettled in 2025 and proposing sending them to the #2 country of origin for refugees resettled from 2025. Like there are people from whether you're looking at Ukrainians or you're looking at people who fled religious persecution on account of their faith. There's so many categories of people who are shut out right now. And we really need to see, I think, especially people who are followers of Jesus. Proverbs 31:8 says to speak up for those who cannot speak for themselves. There are Afghans doing their very best to speak for themselves, but members of Congress are generally not hearing them. But they will, especially as we approach midterm elections, be listening to the views of U.S. citizens who are making clear in a respectful way what their opinions are and that we believe in this country being a refuge for people who fled persecution for a variety of reasons. But I think there is a particular obligation to people who are at risk because they stood alongside our country. And that's something I think the vast majority of Americans agree with. We commissioned some research of Protestant pastors recently through Lifeway Research, and the top three groups, first of all, the vast majority agreed that the U.S. has a moral obligation to resettle refugees. And the top groups that were mentioned that should be a priority were people persecuted for their Christian faith, which includes some of these Afghans as well, incidentally, as well as some of those Congolese. People who are being reunited to family members, which again is a significant share of the people we're talking about right now. And then number three was specifically people who are at risk because of their service to the U.S. military in Afghanistan. Those were the top priorities. Not that there's not other people who are high priorities as well, but the vast majority of Protestant pastors agreed on each of those categories. And only 2% of Protestant pastors said we shouldn't take any refugees.
I mean, this sounds like as the country is looking for things to rally around and for good things to happen and for good things to take place, this is one of those things that we could all find common ground on as far as this keeping of our promise to these vulnerable Afghan allies of ours. So folks, it's make a call. And I mean, lots of people will be like, oh, my senator's office, my congressional leader's office, their voicemail box is full. Send an email. That inbox never gets full. Send an email, write a letter. I mean, these are the things you can also call the White House switchboard. There are many, avenues to voice your opinion in this. And each one of these communities, Afghan Evac, World Relief, We Choose Welcome, and Women of Welcome, we will all have our own avenues in which you can advocate for. So if you are a part of one of these communities, you can go to all of our websites will have action items here. If you comment allies in the comment here, you'll be directed to the call to action, just a simple call to action that you can do. But we would encourage you to stick and pay attention to what's coming out of each of these communities and take the actions that they are suggesting on their websites. And we'll keep you informed, but we need you on this. Our allies need you on this. This is incredibly important. Nothing has happened just yet. The reporting is conversations. So let's stop this from actually happening and stand with our Afghan allies. So thank you everybody so much.
Thing, Bree, that I wanted to say, I know that we said to call your representatives, but actually talk to your friends and your family members and your community, because like we said, this cannot move forward unless more people know what's happening. That's and right. People will be upset if they knew what was happening. Mm-hmm. No matter what side of the political aisle somebody's falling on, I just think it's really important that if you're here and you're hearing this and you know what's going on, talk to 3 to 5 people about it and ask them to do something, because if we don't talk about it, it's just going to fall to the wayside. There's so much, there's a flood of news, but this is something we can do something about. And so please talk to your friends and family members about it.
That's right. I've got something to even expand on that too.
Yeah.
And call your mayors, call your city council members, call your state reps. They have a role in this too, and they can often help motivate the congressional delegations. And folks, if you want to stay in touch, if you want to get weekly updates, we collate all of the press, all of the things that are happening. You can sign up on our Substack at afghanevac.substack.com and get all of our weekly updates. Bree, thank you so much for having us here today. This is really wonderful.
Thanks, guys. We'll be in touch, and we hope you will all choose to use your voice this week and next week until we kind of can solidify a plan for these neighbors that we have. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Bree.
Thank you.
Sounds good.